Hi, this is Dr. Bev Knox, and I'm here today to talk to you about some basic learning concepts in psychology. So we're going to start off with classical conditioning. Why am I talking about classical conditioning? Because I want you guys to know that how we feel about ourselves today, how we look, how our personal appearance, our personal image is today, stems from what? Conditioning. And it could be cultural conditioning, and a lot of us are conditioned based on cultural norms in society. Okay, I'm going to start off with classical conditioning. Do you know that a lot of the phobias that exist, this is by scientific research, of course, a lot of the phobias that we have now, we don't even know what causes most of these phobias, but guess what? A lot of scientific research says classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is the cause. And why? We were conditioned to fear a certain thing. Do you think a little kid just pops out and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm afraid of rats. Let's just, use rats. How gross is that, right? But let's use rats. I'm fearful of rats." Do you think they just popped out of mommy's womb fearing rats? Or could it be that their mother was afraid of rats and they observed their mother whenever she saw a rat probably jumping on the table, screaming, and mom probably taught this child at a very, very, very early age that, you know what, rats are nasty, rats are horrible. If you see one, run, or if you see one, jump on the table, just, get away from it, right? What about lightning? Why do you think a lot of folks are afraid of lightning? Because why? It's really a scary thing. Something negative may have happened, like, for example, me. Okay, I could not stand lightning and thunder. Why? In my childhood back on the island, I was in a very, very horrific, devastating hurricane, okay, that basically flattened the island. So I was conditioned that every time I would hear, thunder or see lightning, that something negative, something bad would happen, like it did when I was young. I was conditioned to believe. Something just triggered a memory in my brain to believe that. And of course I had to do some, because anything that could be learned could be unlearned. So I had to do some little therapy on myself to get over that. Yes, I'm over it now, okay? But I want you guys to go, and you could actually look online and type in Pavlov's dog experiment, okay? Because that will explain a lot in regards to classical conditioning, all right? How we can be conditioned by something that's irrelevant to do or act in a certain way, all right? So that's classical conditioning. Some key notes: classical conditioning, trigger a memory, think of that. Also, in regards to classical conditioning, it's involuntary. Write that down if you're taking notes, okay? Now, operant conditioning. And if you want to go and do more research on this stuff, with operant conditioning, I want you to go and I want you to type in Skinner's pigeon experiment. That's a really good one. I use that one a lot in my classes. So Skinner's pigeon experiment. So remember that, okay? So with operant conditioning, I also want you to write down rewards and punishments. And I also want you to write down it's voluntary. So we learn things. We learn behaviors based on rewards and punishments. Think of your children, if you have any, or think of when you were a child. If your mother didn't want you to throw your cup against the wall because you were, a strong-willed child and you kept throwing your cup against the wall, right? And your mother said, "Stop, no." You were punished. Now, how were you punished? Your mother wanted you to stop that behavior. That was the target behavior. She wanted you to stop that. How were you punished? Well, in some cultures, a good smack in the tush, that's a form of punishment. In other cultures, that's a no-no. You don't hit a child. So mom could hold the child's finger and maybe squeeze the child's finger or put the child in timeout. All these are examples of what? Of punishment. And if the child was doing something that mom liked, mom wanted the child to continue that behavior, what would mom do? That's right. Mom would reward these behaviors. So any behavior that, the mother, wanted the child to keep repeating, she would reward these behaviors, right? So if the mother wanted the child to say thank you or please, to have manners, of course, because we all want our children to have manners, right? Well, most of us do. So if the mom wanted the child to continue to say thank you and please, every time the child wanted something, the child would have to say please. If the child didn't say please, then what would mom do? Either ignore the child or instruct the child. If you want this, you have to say please. Now, every time the child would say please, what would mom do? That's right, reward the child. And there's various ways of reward. We know that, right? Yes, we do. Mom could do what? Praise the child. Praise is a form of reward. Oh, what a good little boy, a good little girl. Pat the child and so forth and say, you're such a good girl. Here's your reward. You get what you want. That is a form of conditioning. Yes, it is. We condition our dogs, our circus animals. How do you think you get, a lion to jump through a hoop? By speaking to him? I encourage you to please, please, please watch Skinner's video on pigeons, because you will actually see a pigeon and you will see that they have some words, and the video starts off like, can pigeons read? And then you will see it says turn, the word turn, and you will actually see the pigeon turning. And you're in shock. You're like, oh my gosh, it's a miracle. The pigeon can read. But no, the pigeon can't read. Well, I don't think the pigeon could read. What it is that the pigeon was conditioned to turn around when it sees the word. And how was the pigeon conditioned? And I hate to say it, they used food or lack thereof to train the yes they starved the pigeon, okay, and then they would use food to reward the pigeon when it did the appropriate behavior. All right, so that's operant conditioning, using rewards and punishments to shape behavior. Well, what about observational learning, you may say? Well, that's huge too. Yeah, sure. Observational learning is huge. We observe behaviors. Now I'm going to use children, all right? Think of this. Children observe behaviors from other people, whether it's good or bad. And when they imitate these behaviors, it's called modeling. Now, if they don't imitate the behaviors, they've still learned it. Sure, they have. Observational learning. But when you go beyond that a little bit and you actually imitate the behaviors that are exhibited, guess what? It's called modeling. And these behaviors can be both negative and positive. And who dictates what's positive or negative? Society. Sure. Societal norms. Your family, your peers, I don't know. Everybody, right? But according to us in this society, we have norms that are considered what? Positive, and norms that are considered what? Negative. So for example, if an older brother, I'm going to use an older brother and younger brother, that's, there's so many different other examples you could use, but these are the examples that I'm using. If an older brother decides to skip school and smoke cigarettes, behind the alley, and the younger brother observes these behaviors. Well, you're like, well, how could a younger brother observe an older brother skipping school? Well, he probably sees him out the window, skipping school, and he decides, to look and see what he's doing, because he could see around the alley, and he sees the older brother smoking cigarettes. Sure, he could learn. That's observational learning. He could learn how to smoke cigarettes just from watching his older brother smoke. But it's not until he too actually skips school, goes behind the alley and starts smoking cigarettes. That, my dear, is considered modeling, because he's imitating these behaviors that he has seen. That is modeling. So in these basic principles of learning in psychology, I just wanted to introduce this to you because, in regards to human behavior, we do things every single day. We act in certain ways every single day, and we have no clue. We have no clue on why we do what we do. We have no clue on why we stay in this dead-end relationships at time and time again. We have no clue on why we repeat certain behaviors, including being in the same kind of relationship. You dumped the woman because she was no good for you. You dumped her. You fought with her. I don't know. You dumped her. And 2 weeks from now, you're in a new relationship with another woman that probably looks just like her and acts just like the one you dumped because you didn't want her. Why is it you do this time and time again? Repeat the same behaviors, get yourself in the same situations over and over and over, expecting a different result. I know that is the definition of insanity. I know it. But it's all about conditioning. I want you guys to take a deeper look into the concept and the topic of learning and conditioning. Classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and observational learning. This is Dr. Bev Knox from bevknox.com, and I hope you learned something today.